Welcome to Cleveland Conversations. I'm Ed Horowitz. Justice is one of the bedrocks of our democratic system. When justice works properly, criminals are prosecuted and convicted of their crimes. But sometimes justice doesn't always work out the way it should. Over 30 years ago, the Innocence Project was founded, nationwide convictions to look into problems of this sort. Over 300 wrongful convictions were overturned by the research and work done by the Innocence Project. Wrongful convictions have been a problem in Ohio and also here in Cuyahoga County as well. Now there is a new organization centered in the Cleveland State University College of Law that is working to address this problem. The Terry Gilbert Wrongful Conviction Clinic is started in January and is looking to have a more local context to sort out the problems of wrongful convictions. Let's welcome our guest today, Laura Greig, who's the director of the clinic. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about the Terry Gilbert Wrongful Conviction Center and Clinic and what you're trying to do there, how it's focused on the problems here in Cuyahoga County.
So we started the clinic in January to focus on cases of actual innocence and manifest injustice. Cuyahoga County is the 9th highest wrongful convictions in the country, and so we thought it would be really important to have a clinic local to Cuyahoga to have boots on the ground to address some of these problems with wrongful convictions. So far we've had 6 students involved in the clinic, and next year we will have 8.
It's great to have students involved. This is a good learning experience for them as part of the college, the Cleveland Marshall College of Law, right? Their motto is to have justice and to learn justice, teach justice. So what is the reason why Cuyahoga County is such in the top 10 of wrongful convictions in the country? That seems pretty high considering the size of our city.
Yes, I wish I could answer that. I think one of the major components that's been borne out through statistics is that we have an issue of government misconduct, more so than some other locations, specific to the prosecutor's office. But you know, there are a myriad of reasons that wrongful convictions occur, and I think that we have all of those here in Cuyahoga County.
Mm-hmm. Let's go through some of those reasons, right? So certainly if someone is accused of a crime here in Cuyahoga County, if they can't pay for an attorney, then an attorney is provided to them, right? So how does that work, and does that play into this process of wrongful convictions?
Yes, so everybody has a right to an attorney. However, in the post-conviction context where we come into play with wrongful convictions, Ohio does not provide that to people that are incarcerated. So if they are trying to appeal their wrongful conviction in the post-conviction context, they are not entitled to an attorney. So we at the clinic are one of their last resorts. We work on a pro bono basis for indigent Ohioans convicted of a felony in Ohio. So we do offer a resource for them to try and file for post-conviction relief.
So if they can't afford an attorney, then they have an opportunity. They are appointed one for the court during the criminal trial. And do you feel like that the public defender's office, the lawyers who are being appointed, they're doing the best job that they can to try and avoid those wrongful convictions? Or do you feel like the role is more on the prosecutor's office?
I think that the Cuyahoga Public Defender's Office is amazing. They have amazing attorneys who are trying their very best, and they have a huge caseload, and I think they do a great job. And I think appointed attorneys, for the most part, are doing their very best. They just have huge caseloads as well. I think it's a matter of funds that, indigent defendants do not have funds, so they do not have the resources and are not provided the resources for fulsome investigations and things that people with more means would have.
Okay, and where do how would if someone's watching this program today, and how would they be able to reach out to you, to your clinic, to find out more about this and what is the process that they would need to go through to ask for such help?
Yes, so we have a website. If you just Google Terry Gilbert Wrongful Conviction Clinic, it will come up, and we have an intake form on that website with our address. So there's about a 20-page intake form that the defendant can fill out, basically stating their claim. They can send it to us and we'll review that. And as long as it's within our scope, we will accept that and do a preliminary review. Certain things will preclude them. So if somebody does have counsel already, we can't represent them. If they're still in the appeals process, we cannot represent them yet. But for the most part, we will take claims of actual innocence and wrongful conviction. They would mail that to us. We would review it and be in touch with them from that point on. We would then initiate a preliminary investigation, and if we feel like we're able to continue with their case, we would elevate that to a full investigation, and then ultimately, hopefully, litigation and exoneration.
So this can take quite a while with such a small staff that you have. It can take years, perhaps, to do it. I understand, right, in other types of wrongful conviction cases, sometimes it's taken many, many years before that process has gone through, because then it must also then perhaps have a new trial, or it might have to be reviewed through the justice system in other parts. So it is slow, right?
Oh, it's extremely slow. And, just even getting the public records to sort of move the investigation forward is a taxing effort, especially in Cuyahoga. But just the sort of painstaking and meticulous nature of this work really does take time, and then it takes time in the courts. There are no specific timelines for the post-conviction petitions that are submitted, so it's sort of at the discretion of the court for the most part, so that can take quite a while.
So are you being inundated so far with the number of different requests for such?
Yes, we've had well over 100 requests at this point. We started taking requests last September, and I anticipate that will just continue.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the other reasons for give me another reason for wrongful convictions?
So there are normally a number of factors will contribute to a wrongful conviction, but among those are eyewitness misidentification, which is the overwhelming sort of major factor. I think it's present in about 75% of wrongful convictions.
Would that be choosing someone from a lineup incorrectly, or testimony in a trial that is incorrect?
It could be both. So basically that sort of process begins at the moment of, the transgression occurring. It could be something where somebody doesn't have good visibility. It could be a cross-racial identification, which is much harder and much less accurate. And then it can also be impacted by what we call system variables, which could be the way that a lineup is produced. So whether somebody is instructed that the suspect might not actually be in that lineup, things of that nature that can influence the identification. So that's by far, like I mentioned, the biggest factor in most wrongful conviction cases. There's also false confessions, where through interrogation techniques, innocent individuals will falsely confess. There's government misconduct, which can include prosecutorial misconduct, judicial misconduct, or police misconduct. There's incentivized informants, which are often referred to as snitches, bad or junk science, ineffective assistance of counsel as well.
Okay, let's go through a couple of those more. Let me go back to the misidentification. I think what a lot of people are thinking about a lineup, they're imagining they're thinking what they've perhaps seen on a TV show. It's been on for decades, Law and Order, or a movie that they've seen. Is that how that process works, or is it a little more systematic than that? Because it seems like in those situations you're looking, and it's easy to see the person who committed the crime that you witnessed.
Yeah, it's not at all accurate, so that's the problem. I don't know the exact stats, but depending on the way that lineup is produced by the authorities, it can really impact somebody's statement. So, the time lapse between when the incident occurred in the lineup, whether good other fillers are picked, whether, like I mentioned, proper instructions are given. There's a lot of pressure at the point for a person to identify somebody. They feel like they may have the ability to push forward an investigation or not, and they need to be told that the person may not be there. And like I mentioned, cross-racial identification is a major one. But basically, the procedures really do have a huge impact on the outcomes. And once somebody has identified somebody in one of those, whether through a lineup or through pictures, once they have made an identification, through a number of psychological effects, they then become more convinced that is the suspect, and will then repeat that at a trial.
Right, and research in psychology certainly has shown that we are easily fooled by what we see with our eyes. So that seems like it should be an obvious problem to fix, but yet our justice system still relies on identification as a primary reason and source for proof of crimes committed, right?
Yeah, and I think you can't get rid of that. I mean, it's a very important component of it, but you need to try to control the process as much as possible. But I think one of the major misconceptions is people, lay people will, and jurors may reflect on memory as something like a camera, right? Like we're recalling videos, but actually every time we recall something, we change it and edit it. So it's not a reliable source of identification necessarily.
Mm-hmm. But that's not something that you would do at the clinic that you can go back and correct. You have to find new evidence that is not been seen. You can't go back and say this person misidentified you, or how does that work in terms of the investigation process? And let's say that's the first number one thing.
Yeah, so it can affect the case in a number of ways. I mean, one of the things now is with new social science research, we can bring an expert back to basically state that this particular identification wasn't necessarily a good one. That would probably not stand alone, but as a component of the case. Mm-hmm. We can try to find and go speak to other people that maybe weren't interviewed at the time, go look for maybe information that wasn't turned over to counsel, or if the counsel didn't use it and should have, that maybe indicates that it was somebody else, to sort of refute that other eyewitness identification. But it's certainly one of the harder things to revisit.
Tell me about the role that junk science plays into it, because I think most of our viewers have seen an episode of CSI or something, right? We see that this complicated, very specific investigative process using lots of good science, but my understanding is that forensic types of work that is shown on TV isn't really close to what goes on in a local police department.
Yeah, no, I wish that it were like that. I think that, when we hear scientists speak, especially ones that are put on by prosecutors, there is this bias by the jurors. It's not intentional, but we give them a lot of credit, right? We'd want to put our trust into these experts.
Sure.
There was a 2009 report from the National Academy of Sciences, which is basically the highest science organization in the country, that really undermined most of this forensic science. Anything like bite mark evidence, a lot of the bullet identification that is conducted, it just couldn't be reproduced in any real way, and that was reiterated in a presidential study in 2017. A lot of these things have been undermined and are still used in courts. They are still allowed in courts. Another thing that DNA has really brought to light how unreliable a lot of this forensics evidence is, because we can rely on DNA evidence to disprove somebody's guilt. But even fingerprint evidence, like you said, when you see these CSI episodes where they're scanning fingerprints. One of the largest terrorism cases, in the last 20 or 30 years was the Atocha bombing in Madrid. And we had the top people from the FBI go and review these fingerprints, and they pinpointed somebody in the United States. And the other authorities said, no, that's not the person. And it turned out that they were wrong. And there were 4 of our highest experts, because latent fingerprints, not in the context of a booking, are not as reliable as we thought.
So much more complicated, all of this, than we are aware of, certainly from most people are not part of the criminal justice system. They're not experiencing that, a family member's not. So I think we all have a certain perception of it from TV, from movies, from what we might read in the news, and this is very, very different. So tell me, what do you think the numbers are in terms of how many people are wrongly convicted? My understanding is about, between 2.5% to 5% of all convicted prisoners in the United States are innocent, and even if just 1% are convicted, that's about 20,000 innocent people that are behind bars in the United States. How do you think that is in Ohio or Cuyahoga County?
I think it's probably representative of the, the national conjectures. Again, that's all conjecture. People have estimated from 2% to 10% on the high end. But, we've had 110 exonerations since 1989 in Ohio alone. Cuyahoga has the 9th highest wrongful convictions in the country. So we certainly have that problem here. What the actual number is, I'm not sure.
And places that are higher than us, that have more of them, would be places in bigger cities like Chicago or New York or elsewhere?
They're definitely Chicago, New York, Houston. There are some smaller jurisdictions as well, but we definitely stand out.
So when persons are wrongfully convicted and they are released, oftentimes there is some funding, some money that is being paid by the city or the state for that. How does that fit into either the people who are coming to you for help or into the type of work? Where do you sort of see that fitting into this whole situation?
Remuneration for wrongful convictions. So we don't handle that. That would be a civil claim that would happen after we were involved. So we would want to, help the person obtain exoneration. So actually get out of the, no longer be incarcerated. But there are a number of local firms that handle those civil claims. It's certainly much more expensive to have to pay that than to just get it right the first time.
Sure.
But that's definitely, something that we handle locally with partner firms.
So as I said earlier, the Innocence Project has been going on for over 30 years. There's organizations and centers, both in Ohio and elsewhere, that are affiliated with that. What is decided that now here in Cleveland at the Cleveland State Law College, why is it starting now? What has been the impetus for this?
So a CSU alum who's a local, very well-known attorney, Terry Gilbert, felt strongly that we needed boots on the ground in Cuyahoga. Like I mentioned, we have a very high number of wrongful convictions here. It's about 40% of all of the exonerations in Ohio have been from Cuyahoga. And it's important to be able to have resources local to actually drive the investigations forward. We know the criminal justice system here better than maybe people who aren't practicing locally. So that was really the driving factor, was to be able to address the nexus of the wrongful convictions occurring in Ohio.
And tell me so Terry Gilbert has been a civil rights lawyer for years, growing up in the city, went to Cleveland Marshall. So for him, this was something that he really wanted to make happen.
Correct. He's a senior advisor to the clinic. He was integral to starting it. I think he's seen over the years sort of the injustices that have played out. Historically, the prosecutor's office here has presented challenges, and so I think he realizes the importance of having something in Cuyahoga specifically.
So where do you think that there would be future clinics like this in law schools, in colleges all over Ohio, in different major cities? Is that sort of because they need to be local to do the best work?
I don't think it's that you need one in every city. I just think that, the Ohio Innocence Project in Cincinnati is about 4.5 hours away. We have the Ohio Public Defender's Wrongful Conviction Project, which is another amazing organization in Columbus. And so I think something in Northeast Ohio is important.
Okay. And the Cuyahoga County prosecutor, Michael O'Malley, has been in office for a number of years now. He recently won re-election. He was challenged, but won overwhelmingly to be re-elected. So his office is involved in this. How does he feel about this clinic happening? Does he feel responsibility for these wrongful convictions? Are they doing any changes in his office, knowing that the clinic is now starting up here, or that we are the 9th largest in the country?
I don't know how Mr. O'Malley feels about our clinic. I do know that there is supposed to be a conviction integrity unit at the prosecutor's office that doesn't seem to have any teeth to it. So that would be nice if that had some, if we could collaborate with them. So far, we haven't really seen a lot of action by the conviction integrity unit. I don't know that he has specific feelings on our clinic. I wouldn't know about that. I do know that there was some major journalism in December of 2023 with the Columbia Journalism School and NPR that did sort of highlight that we do have more claims of prosecutorial misconduct in our appeals in Cuyahoga County. And a lot of those have to do with what we call Brady violations, where exculpatory evidence isn't provided to defense counsel. And
for our viewers, exculpatory evidence means what? Something
that can help the defense. So it doesn't have to be, this proves that somebody's innocent, but if there was an eyewitness who said, I saw somebody else, or I can't identify that person, or something that could help the defense, it needs to be turned over.
Right. So again, our viewers may not understand that, right? For fairness in this judicial process, all the evidence that the prosecutor has and the defense has is all equally shared, so everybody is on the same page. right, in terms of going into that trial.
Right. The prosecutors need to share that with the defense.
And if they're not, then that's going to be causing some problems.
Right. It's a constitutional violation.
That's the Brady violation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is happening.
This is happening, and there are other jurisdictions in Ohio who have accordingly had similar issues, but a lot of them have put into place certain structures to try to alleviate that. It's a very subjective process always, but certain procedures can help make sure that defense counsel is getting what they need. And unfortunately, Cuyahoga has not elected to do that.
And when those Brady violations are occurring, are those persons being sanctioned, or is there any type of follow-up on that?
No, not currently. It does not appear so. Basically, based on the numbers that were presented in these pieces in December, it does not appear that there's any official reprimand that can be seen, at least through the Supreme Court attorney search. There's no disciplinary action on file.
And what's the role of the judges in the system, right? They should be looking at all this. They should be making sure that the trial is being run effectively, fairly. They have to approve what the jury says. So what is the role of the judges in Cuyahoga County in terms of making sure people are not wrongly convicted? What's your impression of that?
I think judges, and I will say as well, prosecutors are trying their best. I don't think anybody's, has malice and is trying to go hide things. I think that just, long-standing traditions for prosecutors' offices and the way that things are done can influence outcomes. I think that the judges are doing the best they can as well. They have, they have large dockets as well. But I think I haven't seen a judicial issue borne out in numbers. We all have heard the Serial podcast where we got a first-hand look into some of these courtrooms, and there have been some sanctions for judges that sort of had more interesting personalities and maybe were admonishing defendants in ways that we wouldn't consider appropriate. But I think overall, we have a great the justice system in Cuyahoga is trying its best.
And like you said, it's a backlog, right? There's numerous cases. There's not enough judges. There's not enough funding, right? There's too many cases to go on, and oftentimes people have to wait a long time for a trial. All this adds to delays and problems with the system, right?
Right. I mean, we weren't set up for the number of cases that we process now. As mass incarceration has increased, we basically are overloaded in a system that wasn't meant to process this many people. Okay.
Laura, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get interested in wanting to work on cases like this? What's your background that brought you to be the director of the Terry Gilbert Wrongful Conviction Clinic?
So I actually participated in an actual Innocence clinic when I was in law school at the University of Texas, and also a criminal defense clinic. So that was an amazing experience. That was basically the catalyst for a lot of my pro bono activity over the course of my career. I did government investigations with a big law firm, so that investigative background was there, and so when this opportunity presented itself, I jumped at it. Okay, great.
So, and where you said you have 5 or 6 students working at the clinic now. Do you have other staff as well?
Not yet. We'll have some interns over the summer. We'll have 8 students working in the clinic for the whole academic year next year, and so we're really looking forward to that increase in personnel.
And you're one of several clinics within the Criminal Justice Center at
Correct.
The college, right?
Yes. Yes, we have the pretrial justice clinic that deals with sort of the pre-trial component, and then we have the re-entry clinic, which is sort of the post system clinic, and so we're trying to address basically each step in the life cycle of the litigation with our criminal justice center.
Right. And where so if persons are in the situation of feeling they're wrongfully convicted and they're trying to do this right, you will only look at persons here in Cuyahoga County, right? So it's not in the rest of Ohio.
No, it's all over Ohio.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, just because of the increased number here, a lot of them will be from Cuyahoga, but no, we will look at it has to be within the state of Ohio.
Okay, within the state of Ohio, and you're connected to the wrongful conviction movement throughout the country. How is that related?
So there's the Ohio Innocence Project in Cincinnati, and they do amazing work, and they've been around for a very long time. And then there's the Ohio Public Defenders Wrongful Conviction Project, which is also an amazing organization, and we are collaborating with them, and we are, hopefully going to be of help in the sense that there are so many cases and so few attorneys to do this work that really we're hoping that we'll be able to affect change and that more people can find representation.
So Laura, there may be some people watching who are saying to themselves, look, I understand mistakes happen, but criminals commit crimes. They should be behind bars. This is not something where our efforts should be put to. We should be spending more time tracking down criminals, and convicting them, rather than listening to people who say they're innocent when they're really not. How do you respond to people's claims like that?
I mean, I would say, it's a waste of people's time to make these claims of actual innocence, but we do investigate them very thoroughly. And we're, able to sort of ascertain whether we think somebody has actually committed a crime or not. The statistics, like I said, bear out that there are a huge number of people that need assistance that did not commit the crime. I think that there's no bigger injustice than sitting in prison when you didn't do something, and I think those people deserve a voice, even if it's a smaller, number than other communities. And I do want to emphasize that our clinic is not just isolated to actual innocence claims. We also take claims of manifest injustice, whether that be, a Brady violation, but also instances of severe over-sentencing. So if there's, for example, a nonviolent crime with a very, very long sort of draconian sentence, we would love to review those claims as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what do you, in terms of the persons who are convicted here in Cuyahoga County, they're primarily young black men, how would you characterize that group?
Yeah, I mean, overwhelmingly, the wrongful conviction demographic is black, generally younger males from underrepresented communities with lack of access to resources, education, financial, of that nature. So
it's a much bigger problem than simply, it's a larger, wider problem that we need to address beyond what the clinic is going to be able to do here in Cuyahoga County. Absolutely,
and wrongful convictions have impacts that go way beyond just the individual being wrongfully convicted. They impact the communities from which these people come in very negative ways. So it's an important thing to address.
Laura, thank you for being with us. If you feel that one of members of your family or someone you know has been wrongfully convicted, you can reach out to the Terry Gilbert Wrongful Conviction Clinic at the CSU Law College, and your claim will be investigated. Thank you for watching Cleveland Conversations. I'm Ed Horowitz. We'll see you next time.